for inviting me. The topic that I brought to you is the topic basically I tried to learn myself and realized that it's not so much information on the internet that you can find to make it really easy to start and to understand. Few words about myself. Probably the most interesting for you would be this link for Angular Pro screencast that I record and provide for free on YouTube. There is also a set of videos about service workers. It might be a really nice extension to this presentation, so I really recommend you to check it out. Also, I'm always saying that with any sort of questions, JavaScript related, Angular related, service worker related, you're welcome to ping me on my Twitter. And before we start, also quite important for me that with this slide, I start all my presentations now. The picture which you see is my hometown, and the building is the office where our company, our team worked at some point. So the war itself is terrible, and it's especially like you feel it when it touches you directly. And by this slide, I just ask everybody to support Ukraine, sometimes with donations, sometimes just by sharing information. That's very important. So back to our agenda. For any sort of topic, before going deep into framework, we need to understand how the concept works without framework to have the way better understanding together with framework. That's why we start with just understanding what service workers are, how we can use pure service worker with just JavaScript, and then we will go to Angular and see Angular possibilities of service workers. So a few words about service workers. It might be quite confusing because we have service workers and web workers. In some definitions of service workers, they are also called special type of web workers, but I would consider it like two different things. And they are really different. No, similarities are not that much as difference. And you need to know that for web workers, you can create as many as you can, but service worker, it will be only one, and only one per your application for all the tabs. And also important thing to know is service web workers are made more for computation and parallelism, and service workers are made more to work with network, to cache something, to provide offline possibility. Also, there is a sort of confusion. We are all Angular developers, or most of us Angular developers, as far as this Angular meetup. And we know concept of interceptors. It also sounds quite familiar in terms of functionality, but let's look into details. Here we know our interceptor. We create a class that can catch our HTTP request or response and do something with it before it gets to the server. And in fact, Angular interceptors can do a lot of things for us, really a lot. But what's the difference between service worker and interceptors? If you look at all the blocks, we have Angular application, HTTP client, interceptor, and then service workers. From this point of view, and then the package goes, the network call goes to the server. From this perspective, it looks like interceptors and service workers are interchangeable. So you either use interceptors or service workers, doesn't matter. But if you look from different angle, you will see that interceptors work only with requests that are made via HTTP client. But service workers, they work with basically all browser requests, including index HTML itself. It's very important to understand. Also, it's about all JavaScript files, images, CSS files, or some AJAX requests, like if it, for some reason, one of our libraries is doing requests not with HTTP client, but for example, with fetch. So some more additional information, what service workers are. We should know that it's not about touching the DOM. It's about working with network. And a lot of asynchronous operation are there. Also important one, that's HTTPS. So it will work only on your local host or on HTTPS. If you have a real domain and you don't have HTTPS, that's the reason why service worker might not work for you. So they provide us reliability, performance, and push notifications. That was the brief overview. Let's now continue with use. Maybe we can also do questions between blocks or question at the end of the talk, whatever is more convenient for us. So, but do not hesitate to ask questions in text or via voice option. So first of all, what you need to do is register your service worker file. And it's quite easy, I would say. You need only one line of code. You use navigator global object, then you have service worker and register method. And here you specify your sw.js service worker file. Also, more advanced with options, you can add a scope where you want to save all the service worker assets. And here you can specify, for example, your version or your application to make a distinguish between them. Also, obviously, I simplify this code as much as possible to highlight the main part, but you will also add some conditions that service workers are supported in your browser, that your page is already loaded, and so on. I just skipped it to highlight the most important thing. This slide I just left. I will leave it here just for you. Sometimes service worker doesn't work. That's the most like often reasons. And what about service.js sw.js file? What's inside? We already looked at that we need to register it, but what's inside this file? And inside this file, we work with events. We have set of events like install, activate, message, fetch, sync, push, and we have some experimental one that's I have no plans to cover in this talk, but it's good also to know, and you can check also documentation. So, for example, how install works, or how we should work with install event. Everything what you're doing with events should be done with method add event listener. So we are listening for those events. And for installation, when service worker was installed, you have this event. And you can also set up additional things to cache something, or to, like here, for example, I decided to cache some index.html, some .js, and here add to cache, there is no such method. I just created a convenient helper with use of cache API. So it's basically 2 lines of code, but I want them. And it's async method, so asynchronous method that we can also, for our convenience, event has wait until, and we can provide our asynchronous method here, and event will wait till our cache procedure is done, and only then it will indicate that installation is complete. Also, we have activate event, and obviously the question, what's the difference between install and activate? And activate was made by developers. They realized that installation, because you have one service worker for all tabs of your browser, and sometimes it might happen that one tab is updated and another one not, but it's probably not good for application consistency. That's why browser waits till you're done with all the tabs, so you need to either close of them or close all the others and refresh the last one to be sure that we can activate simultaneously for all the applications that are open in your browser. So your service worker can be already installed but still not activated. Still old version of service worker will be running. And we are moving next, probably to most important one event of service workers fetch. Exactly this event allows you to control the information and how you want to provide it to the user, and whether you want to do a server request or not, HTTP request. Here is an example how we can use, for example, cache. Previously we stored here some files in cache. And now we can use our cache and say when we make a request to the server, we try first to respond with something that we already have in cache. And it's super convenient because we can provide just event.request, and Cache API already has match function that will identify what request is it and whether there is already a cached file for it. You can also check Cache API within MDN documentation. And also, I have a video episode of Screencast where I show that actually here you can put whatever you want. So basically, index page or any page will be requested, but with help of service worker, you can provide not exactly the page, or you can provide the page from cache, or you can provide something completely different. Here, service worker provides you a lot of flexibility what to do with content. Next one is message. Message works the same like with web worker. That's probably the one similarity that we can see. So from when service worker is ready, we can send message from the main frame to service worker. For example, we need to provide some data. to service worker. Or we would like from mainframe tell service worker that we would like to flush the cache. Also possible. We are sending the message. The same like for other events, we can listen inside service worker file. We can listen those messages and react. Also with some action, cleaning cache, whatever. Also, we can send message back. For example, if we clean the cache, we can send that operation completed. We can send message back to mainframe, and from mainframe we can also add event listener for the message and listen for messages from service workers. So such a message bus to communicate, to send the data, and sometimes to send some comments to service worker or back. Also, there is a sync event. Sync event, when you can set up periodic sync and also send information what you need to do on this sync. For example, here we have like each amount of hours or days you will clean up the cache. And also push notifications, the event itself of push notifications, it's super simple. You just need subscribe and you're getting push notifications. But in fact, the logic of push notification is quite complex. That's why I even created a separate section for push notifications with help of service workers. And I found quite nice illustration on our website. The link I provided below, I updated a bit. What do you need to do to have push notifications inside your web application? So first thing, you need subscribe. You need subscribe locally inside your browser. Then when you subscribed, you can send subscription information back to the server. You can store this information for each client. You can store this information on the server. And after, when you need to do a broadcast, you use all the stored subscriptions and send push notification to each of those subscriptions. So let's now look at inside the code and steps 1, 2, 3, 4. First, subscribe. How it works with service workers. With service worker, first of all, when service worker is ready, it returns back service worker registration, and registration has object push messenger, and push messenger has method subscribe. And to subscribe locally, you need at least 2 mandatory parameters. This one, user visibility only. If you put it into false or if you don't put it at all, you'll get an error. So by browser regulation, it's not possible. Only visible push notifications are allowed. And also you need to use the key, the public key. For push notifications, you'll have to create key pair with public and private keys. So here you're using public key. And after subscribing, you have subscription information. So that was step 1. Now you have subscription. You need, and that was on client side. Now you need to send this subscription information to the server. Well, just like an example, we can use just a fetch method and localhost. The most important one that here that we are sending the object to the server. Server needs to know all this information about your subscription to make it possible to send push notification back. So that's we are sending to the server. Step 3, I took an example Express application on Node.js server, and for subscription endpoint, what we are doing, well, we are just storing it in file. Obviously, I created a simple example as possible, but in more advanced one, you would probably want to store it somewhere in database. But anyway, the idea that we need to store the subscription information to use it after. And after server has this information, we can do a broadcast. The most popular library for push notifications is Web Push. Web Push library can help us to generate, not only send push notification, but also generate this key pair. It's quite convenient and not that difficult. Please check the documentation of Web Push. It's only one command to generate key pair. And after, this script is also super simplified. First, you set up Web Push with keys, and you can send notification with your subscription information, and you send the text. So one more time, we subscribe locally in the browser. After we got a subscription object, we need to store the subscription object on a server. And after we will use the subscription object to do broadcast. I provided an example only for one client, but in fact, as you understand, each user will be separate client, so you will store it somewhere in database, you will do a loop, and within this loop, you repeat broadcast send notification operation for each subscription. One more side topic. During research of service workers, I found interesting link. You can check it yourself in your browser to see how many service workers you already have. You would be quite surprised, I would say. And for some of them, you probably even don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're really doing some convenient work for website, or they're just mining Bitcoins. Because the specific of service workers, they continue work after you close the tab. That you should keep in mind. And now to the final part about Angular. Now I hope, understand how they work, how service worker work with pure JavaScript. We can look at Angular and see what we have with Angular CLI. It's super convenient, and thanks for Angular team that they provided such a schematics that with only one command, you're getting your package install, some updates for index.html, also build config is updated, service worker module added, and manifest file is added. So all done for you with only one command. And offline mode already possible from this moment. That's also super convenient. So you can use your current Angular application, run this command, and your application is ready to be used offline, at least for read-only mode. Obviously, it will be not possible to store any information or to edit information, but it's already good enough. And let's look in more details about possibilities of cache. First of all, what's being cached? From the first moment when you apply this command, you have all the assets cached together with index.html file. And it's also good to know that you have application tab in your web developer tools, and you can go to the cache storage and see what exactly was cached, which files. Also, You can go to configuration of Angular Service Worker and you can adjust what do you want to cache in terms of assets, HTML, JavaScript, styles, and also how do you want to do it. There are two types of setup. It's install mode and update mode. Well, from the naming, we already understand that first one is about first installation, second one is about to update it after. And for each one, we have prefetch and lazy. Prefetch means that we will try to get content as fast as possible. And second one, we will lazily cache it only when it was called. Also, it's possible to cache external resources, not only local files of your website. You can specify link to external resource and you can also cache it. Obviously, it's also possible to cache not only assets, but also HTTP requests with help of data group section. Here is TypeScript definition of data group. We see a lot of parameters, but most interesting ones, probably the strategy. The strategy, like it was for cache, was pretty much the same. It's about freshness or performance. Freshness, we try to do the call to server first. Performance, we try to use cache first. And here we have example of data group that we would like to cache such URLs by this mask. How we want to do the strategy, how long do we want to store it, and so on. Also, that's convenient that Angular Service Worker provides us nice service to know when update is available. So when we have new version of Service Worker, you can subscribe and Angular will tell you that new version is ready. And from this point, you can make a nice prompt to your user showing that message that new version application is ready, whether you want to install it. And push notification. Push notifications now in Angular. And in Angular, when we understand how push notifications work in pure JavaScript, it's easier to understand how they work in Angular. Because frankly speaking, I started with push notifications with Angular, and it was so difficult for me to understand why do we need so many actions. And finally, when I did all the way from pure JavaScript, it doesn't look so complex anymore. So the same like we saw here on the picture, we need registration. Here, registration in browser. That's what we have here. When we subscribe, we do the registration. And we have our subscription information. Subscription information that should be sent to a push notification server that will send back broadcast. And here we can subscribe for this broadcast, also with help of this service, subscribing to notification clicks. That's basically it for the presentation. You're welcome to ask any questions.
Thank you, Stepan. Please feel free to just raise your hand if you have any question, and then you can unmute yourself and ask. Anyone could just raise hand by clicking on raise your hand section. Have any questions regarding this?
I'll just repeat if at some point you will understand that you have a question, please, yeah, ping me and always welcome.
Oh, hey Joy, just unmute yourself and ask.
Hi Stefan, nice session.
Hey.
So my question would be, I got confused when you explaining how interceptors and service worker relate. Could you just explain it on a deeper level, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. In fact, we can do a lot of operations either with interceptors or with service workers. Only we need to take into account that service workers are not supported in specific web browsers. So in this case, you'll probably be able to do it only with interceptors. But some operations, like caching those files, index.html, JavaScript files, images, CSS, or trying to catch request that was sent not via HTTP client is not possible to do with interceptor. Not possible to do with interceptor, yeah, right. But there are some things that possible for both. For example, you can add additional HTTP headers, for example, authorization headers. You can add them on interceptors level, or you can add them on service workers level. Is it more clear now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool.
My other question would be, what is the web performance costs on using service workers? Does it increase your web performance or reduce it?
That's a very nice question. At least I didn't have any problems. Maybe I didn't use heavy service workers, but it's nice to check. In this case, I believe they work the same like web workers. So they work in parallel. They do not block your mainframe. Well, only in case your mainframe is waiting response from service worker when request was made.
Okay. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
Anyone else, please feel free to just raise your hand and ask.
Yeah, and as I told you, you can also rewatch the screencast. Some parts are also presented here. Some parts will be additional, and try to do it yourself. These simple steps from on a pure JavaScript. Yeah. Probably push notification. Push notification is more advanced. Example, try to just register your service worker and try to do cache yourself. It will already give you a lot of understanding.
Okay. We'll start with Karanja and then we'll go to John's. So Karanja, you can just go ahead.
Hello, I hope you guys can hear me.
Yeah.
My question was regarding testing part of these service workers. How hard or how easy is it to test your code that involves service workers?
How hard to test? I would say probably service workers That's something that you rely on browser functionality, and I don't see really unit tests, only if you have really heavy logic on service workers to test it separately before it is loaded into service worker. So test it like a SW module, and when it's loaded to service worker, probably you need to run end-to-end test.
Okay. At least I've gotten some insight into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Karanja. John's Meta.
Yes, good evening. Is everybody hearing me well?
Yeah.
Yes, my question is on the service worker when you are adding notifications. Is there, okay, how do you register like a client, and maybe you want to use your own server, and then you want to give your notifications your own private key and your own private key to register. So which is the best way to do it?
Yeah, I understood your question. So first of all, you don't want to provide private key to anybody. You want to keep private key on your server, which will send notifications. The only thing you provide is the public key. As we saw here, to subscribe on your client, you provide all your users, all your clients provide with public key from key pair, and private key still you keep on a server. It's not the best idea to share private key. Does it answer your question?
Yes, but I wanted more clarification on which service you can use to generate the private and the public keys. The service which you can use to do that.
I recommend you to use the library that I showed you in this example. Yeah, here. It is called Web Push. You can install it like npm package, and you can install it like npm package globally. It has a CLI command, with help of CLI command. You can check documentation. It's very easy. It's one command, and you will get output with JSON in JSON format for public and private key. So for your server, you generate your pair, and you need to do it only once, I think, normally. And for all clients, for all users, you need only one public key. So you do not generate each time new one. Subscription will be different, but public key stays the same.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay. I think there was someone who was asking about. Let me just see somewhere. Someone had asked me. Was in some scenarios, when one adds the Angular PWA package, but then it does not generate a manifest file. Like, what could be the problem, and if so, how can you go around that?
Sometimes, for some reason, people do not try to do this command. Where is it? This one. but try to do it manually. And in this case, you just need to be sure that you followed all the steps. So how I would do, I would create separately a fresh Angular application. I would run this command and check all the differences and clearly compare whether index file is there, whether everything is there, whether service worker is included, because it's hard to say for specific issue without knowing that's whether there is any error or it's not just generated. So that's the logic I would go. And
Okay.
when I'm sure that everything, well, I would probably bet that something is wrong with build configuration. But it could be something else. So to be sure, I would compare all these changes. It's not a lot. Or you mean not manifest file, or this one was not generated?
The manifest file.
Because we have manifest configuration file, and we have manifest files generated for distribution, right?
I think they meant the manifest.json, like NGSW manifest.json.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's clear. So if anyone has probably bumped into such kind of a problem, just always be sure to check on your changes, like probably file changes and all that, and then probably you can be able to see where exactly the problem is. Okay. Anyone else?
You can, if it's about also in addition, if it's about schematic itself, well, it's open source, so nobody stops you from going to all the commands that nged for this module is doing and check detailed, like, and you even can go crazy with debug by copying this command. So not running nged, but copying code of this function, putting breakpoints, and running it locally with your code. And after maybe reporting an issue back to Angular team that for something is wrong for your specific case that they can fix and add some more conditions that it will also work for you.
Okay. Okay. I think we also have another question from Sean. Sean?
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay. Mine is a question out of curiosity. I'm sorry I joined a little bit late, but I was able to capture as much as I could. There was somewhere I had read somewhere sometime back, among the features and benefits of service workers include what you covered in cache and as well in push notification. So there's something about background sync. I'd like to just know, out of curiosity, is there a limit by which you can store your inputs? Let's say when your application is offline, and consider that you can sync it when you're back online. Is there a limit by which you can store your inputs? Yeah.
Frankly speaking, I don't remember by heart all the limitations, and I believe that from browser to browser they're different. With modern browsers, I believe you have quite some space. If you are speaking about text information, that's not a problem at all. I believe you have megabytes that you can use, and you can store quite huge amounts. So, is it a practical question? What's problem are you trying to solve?
Oh, okay. It was just an idea. Yeah, it was just to know. Yeah, just out of curiosity.
I believe that for mobile, for example, handsets, it could be also different, and it could be less than for desktop ones. I also think that it's possible to find this information via internet. Well, at least I, in all my project, didn't reach the limit, and it wasn't the case that I have to dive into and check all the parameters.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. Johns, are you raising your hand again, or we didn't put it down? Okay. If there's anyone else who has yes, Johns.
Can I ask? Yes,
Sure.
I have tried. Yes, I have installed a fresh Angular application just a few minutes ago, and I have used the ng add at Angular /pwa, but the files which are listed there, they are not yet created. I'm actually running Angular 14, so I don't know what's the problem.
So could you repeat it? Something with the sound? I hear some echo or some distortion. So what's exactly your issue? I hear that you're using Angular 14. That's good, quite fresh.
Yes,
and
I have.
And you're running the command. And what's
Yes, I have installed a new fresh application, but and also used the command ng add Angular /pwa, but the files which you have listed are not yet created. So I don't know what's the problem. Maybe you can advise on how to go about it.
you are running exactly this command, yes? And it generates something, yes, but not all the list, or it doesn't generate at all.
It doesn't generate all the files.
Probably
Maybe
it's good.
Maybe
after
do it. You can just show us a demo, and then maybe you can see what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, if you can share the screen. Or it's also possible if you just store your code somewhere on GitHub and share the link, that after the presentation I can check and return back to you is what might be the issue.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? What's the question? Okay. If there's no question, okay, going once, twice. All right. So I think I'll say a big thank you to Stepan for taking the opportunity to take us through this session. I know that for some might bump into issues when it comes to installing some of these packages. So please feel free to reach out to Stepan if you have any additional questions, or else you can also reach out to us here at Angular Kenya. You can reach out to any of the mentors. You can even drop your problem that you have on the WhatsApp group. Just be sure to put up the repo, and then we'll be able to check it out and assist wherever we can. But if you have anything else that you would like to reach out to Stepan, if you want to consult him for something, I think he'll share with us his socials. I think he shared it at the beginning, and he'll also share it with us later on. So
yeah. Stuart Meister, my
yeah.
And it will be also in presentation that I'll share with you also.
Yeah. Awesome. All right.